Now, going back to the panel, I will start with Joanne, and I'll give you this microphone, and I will keep the one that is not very good, but you pass the microphone around. Thank you.
So I'm Joanne Leith, and I'm with Loyalist Community Employment Services. We are part of the Employment Ontario network. In Ontario, we assist people in finding work. We're funded by the Ministry of Training, colleges and universities. There's a few different components to what we do. We have resource centers in our offices in Belleville and Bancroft that offer photocopying, faxing. There's staff there to look at resumes, cover letters, all those sorts of things. We have counselors like myself you can meet with on an individual basis. We assist with whatever works best for that individual. So it's going to be very personalized individual service. And we would talk to each individual, find out what their situation is, what their goals are, and assist them in whatever way makes the most sense. There are a variety of Employment Ontario programs and services that are available to anyone in the province who can work in the province. So the refugees that are coming, the Syrian refugees, are permanent residents, and they would have access to quite a variety of programs and services to help them out in their employment. We are one of the service providers in the area. As I said, we have offices in Belleville and Bancroft, and we provide visiting services, including, I go once a week to Quinte Immigration Services and provide service to those individuals on site. So if they're more comfortable meeting with somebody there, I can do that. There are other places, other service providers like ourselves, that, like Meta, they're also in Belleville. And I know there's a couple of folks here from Career Edge, and they have offices in Lorraine, in Trenton and Picton, Napanee, and other areas. So I would say if you're working with anyone, any of the refugees, certainly have them connect with one of our offices. The ministry has provided us as well with a list of our services in Arabic and other languages.
Before you go on, I just would like to mention, Joanne, as you mentioned, she comes to our office once a week. Now, we have noticed that the number of clients, the tendency is to increase, and I'm going to be talking to all the service providers. We have office space available. We would like to try and create a one-stop shop so that they don't have to be going from one place to another. And I'll be starting those negotiations with the executive directors of those organizations who are delivering this type of services, so that we can increase the amount of hours that their staff, since we don't have those programs, can come to our office. So this will cover for the gap that we currently have of not having those services directly delivered. So this is the type of network that we need, so that all the clients will be, without duplication, will be able to access those services. Thank you, Joanne. Next is Michelle.
I have a question, please.
Sorry, yes?
The microphone went fast. I missed the lady's name. I missed the organization she represented.
I'm Glenn. No.
Then I looked at the plan, and I'm sure that wasn't it.
Joanne Leith from Loyalist Community Employment Services.
Good afternoon, my name is Michelle Rosebush, and I manage all non-credit programs for the Algonquin Lakeshore Catholic District School Board, which spans from Trenton, our southwest Picton, and to Kingston, east of Kingston. In that portfolio, I manage English as a second language, which is funded by the Ministry of Immigration and Internet. Isn't that awful? They just changed their name. Ministry of Citizenship, Immigration, and International Trade. Okay, so that's the provincial funder for the ESL program. And then I also have a LINK program in Belleville, and it is language instruction for newcomers to Canada, funded by Citizenship and Immigration Canada. Or is it a new name now? RCC. IRCC. What is that? Demonstrate Refugee. Okay. I haven't received that memo yet. So, and I also manage ESL in Kingston and literacy and basic skills, as well as international languages for elementary children. So, but in Belleville, we do have several programs, ESL programs and LINK programs, And we have, all the classes are based on Canadian language benchmarks. And we have beginner classes, intermediate classes, and advanced classes. So, and we also have pre-benchmark. So right now we have 3 Syrians in our pre-benchmark class, or literacy class. And they're doing extremely well. In fact, one of them just had a birthday early this week, and we celebrated her birthday with a cake and singing happy birthday to her. So we do have a very welcoming environment with our instructors. We have 2 full-time instructors and 2 part-time instructors and several supply instructors as well. And they are TESOL certified, that's teaching English as a second language. And some are qualified teachers as well. So they are extremely qualified to teach English as a second language. And when we're talking about one of those myths like Joe did with Canadian mental health and PTSD, just because we can speak English doesn't mean we can teach English the same way. So if you do have somebody who has an ESL background, like we're one of the volunteers, I would strongly suggest you try and employ them, even as a volunteer. So I don't know what else I can say. I guess that's about it.
Before we move on then, just to remark that Michelle, the school is in the same building as the QUIS building. So it's, as I mentioned before, the one-stop shop. So that's the concept. We are right next door, so we can assist them in multiple ways. Also, before I go to the next, I would like, Kendra, if you can stand up, because it's an important piece that Kendra is the language assessor for the LINK program.
For LINK and English as a second language.
And English as a second language. So everyone needs to have an assessment of their language skills. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to borrow you the microphone and I'll let Kendra talk a little bit about that, because this is a very important piece that needs to be.
Yes, we work very closely with Kendra.
Well, why don't you come over here?
It's easier. Sorry to put you on the spot, but you know.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kendra Noble, and I'm the language assessor for the Kingston and Belleville area. That also covers Picton and Tweed, and any of your smaller communities where you might be sponsoring a family. The first step for adults who want to study English at a government-funded program is to go through a language assessment. That finds their level and also their language needs. And from there, my job is to help connect the newcomer with the appropriate language training. In Belleville, there's 1 school, and in Kingston, there are 4. So there's also other programs like online English programs and French. So my role is to help the newcomer make the best choice.
So Denise? Yes, do you have a question?
What's the website for the online? Because some of the ladies, they can't fit in the school, so maybe we can just put it for them and they can.
So the online program is called Link Home Study, and the website is www.linkhomesteady.ca. The first choice is for the newcomer to go to the language training school, ideally, because of the social network. They can make the connections and the daily interaction with the teacher. So the first choice is to go to the class, to be in the classroom setting. The other issue with the online program is they do have to have a minimum level of English to be able to navigate the online program. So my job would be to find their level and see if they meet that. And the level is about a 2 or a 3, which might not mean anything to you without knowing the scale, but the very beginners cannot access the online program. So if you have someone who can't leave the home, I think the first situation might be helpful to look into the volunteer database to find ESL volunteers. I know in Kingston and Belleville, there's a larger waiting to be accessed, and going to a home might be an option.
What's the protocol in making an arrangement with you for you to do an assessment?
A question, I will repeat it so that everybody can missed what the question was. What is the protocol that the client would need to access the services?
So the language assessment and referral service that I offer in our community is funded through the ministry and IRCC, the federal government. And you can make an appointment directly through to my service, or you can connect with one of the language schools in Belleville or Kingston, and also Orlando's office, the immigrant service. So there are many ways to connect to this assessment center.
One thing that happens when the group first contacts us is try to get the intake of the needs assessment of the client or the family. And part of the needs is normally the first step would be the language assessment. So we contact Kendra and set an appointment. She would come to the office and do the language assessment. The language assessment, the second step will go for the ESL, or depending on the age, if it's a child, it would be the school board, am I correct here? And then the school board would have, and I tried to get somebody else from the school board, a different school board, but I don't think, I think they were here this morning, but they were not able to be part of the panel. But anyway, it's a very similar process, but a bit different in terms of how the assessment is made. Any other questions? No?
Hi, I'm Denise Dagan. I'm Director of Student Services at Loyalist College. I'm sure you're all familiar with Loyalist College. I have lots of brochures in the back door. What I want to share with you, though, is that the college system has been actively engaged in the integration of newcomers into the college system and into employment for the last 12 to 15 years. And thank goodness for CIC for supporting a number of bridge programs to help us to do that. So we have a lot of tools and resources at our disposal to help that integration. And often people underestimate that integration. I don't know how many taxi cabs I've been in where I've counseled people to go back to college, go to George Brown, go anywhere. You got a master's degree in science and you've been driving a taxi cab for 10 years. It really disturbs me. And the quicker you get people, they all have to have a survivor job. That's great. But the quicker you get them back into their sector, the faster they will integrate and the more successful we regain their integrity, their pride, etc. So that's critical, and that's where your college system can assist you. In terms of when a person, I've seen many newcomers, I've supported many newcomers in getting jobs in their professions. So for example, if you've been in the construction industry, to use that example today, if you've been in the construction industry in Syria, there are gaps. What's going to happen if you primarily worked with wood as opposed to cement, or cement as opposed to wood? Number one, you don't have the Canadian building codes. Number two, you're not familiar with the various resources such as AutoCAD. AutoCAD's a big Canadian tool and nobody else uses it. So what we would do as a college system is review and assess their skills, identify those gap areas, give them advanced standing. There's additional practices which Mark will talk about. But essentially what we'll do is help them figure out what are the pieces they're missing and get them back into the system. So that's a critical piece, a role the college can play. We also provide them with support in work placements, getting out into the workforce with preceptors, with coaches, with support to get them and to have a positive experience. So it's not only about, it's about a skill set and having the right skill set. Like it or not, employers like to have Canadian accreditation. And even though we don't think that's a great thing for people to base a hiring on that, it gives the employer a sense of where you're at. It gives them a sense of the standard. It's really critical. The other experience that I've had, if you're an engineer and you're in nursing or healthcare and it's a regulatory profession, it's extremely difficult to get into the regulatory profession. And if you noticed this morning, the gentleman talked a lot about titles. That concerns me. If people are very proud of their titles, they're going to have a really tough time coming into a job that is not at their level. And so we're going to have to help them to support that process and integrate them in, because that's very frightening. So for example, I've been in the experience where we've taken internationally educated professional engineers, brought them in. The Ontario Professional Engineering Association of Ontario would not recognize their skills, but if we give them a college accreditation, train them as a technician, train them as a technologist, we can get them right into the sector, making $50,000 to $60,000 a year, and then the employer goes after the professional association. It took me a few years to figure that out, but it works if the employer goes after the college system has up their sleeve to get people integrated into the workplace. The other issue that in my experience has been really important is language that goes to the next level, which is really looking at the lexicons of the occupation. There's a language specific to every occupation, and in Canada it could be very different than in Syria. So how do we support them? Because they won't understand the language that's specific to the occupation. So we need to help them to work with them and integrate them in that respect. The other that I can't underestimate is cultural integration. It's extremely difficult if you come from a different environment, a war-torn country, and you walk into a workplace, and for some people it's having their own office, they don't know what to do. Or for some people it's working as part of a team. They haven't got a clue what to do, or they find it an insult, right? So there's all kinds of intercultural communication training that has to go on as well. What we have at the college, to add to the language and support the programs that are in existence, is we have a program that's called English for Academic Purposes, which is a wonderful process that assesses your skills, looks at not only how you speak, people, and these ladies will attest to it, I think you said it, people can speak very fluently, but not have the comprehension. So for example, they can speak fluently, well, they can speak English, but in fact, they really don't have the comprehension. So that's another whole chunk of it that we have to do. And again, so for me, it's the language proficiency, understanding the occupation, the cultural integration into the workplace, Canadian accreditation. So I think all of those are really important elements. Another piece is, for me, is the entrepreneurship, the opportunity for self-employment. So if in fact we can meet with people once they've had some language training in the community, get them to a certain level, we'll look at their occupational skills, identify what they need, build an educational plan for them, and integrate them into the workplace. Now we're also, Orlando and I, as we can share, we did put a proposal in, we're hoping it will be successful, where in fact we also provide that same kind of support for the spouses, because often two people need to work. And one of the biggest things that you'll see newcomers come is the partner needs to get some training or expertise to get into the survivor job so the other person can go to school. So there's a variety of things that we've got to have, but there's a lot of work to be done there. And I really feel as a college system, I hope you remember us, and then we'll be very happy to work with you on that process to integrate people into the workplace.
Thank you. Before we move to the next one, when we decided to go for the panel, we had a kind of a inner thought, a conversation of how can we assist in the integration process of the families. It will take time, but there are several pieces that goes for language assessment, language training, then training at a college, and for those who already have some training but have not the paperwork, because coming from a war-torn country, it's difficult to bring all the documentation. Sometimes the city where they have come from is no longer there. So how would we be able to find out what type of skills the person has? And that is our next panelist. Do you have a question? Or?
Just further to what Denise was saying, I know it must be very, very confusing for people who aren't familiar with English as a second language education. But in order for our people or our students to go on for further training and education, it's really important that they have a minimum level of ESL training, which is normally a CLB 6 or a CLB 7. So because we do have an OSSD program, so people won't get to grade 12, so they can come to our language classes so that we can get them to that level so they can successfully transition into a credit program to get their grade 12. Or they can go on to college, because college needs a minimum level as well for them to be successful. The last thing we want to do is set them up for failure. So we teach them in those 4 skilled areas of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And you know, it usually takes about a year per level, right, Barbara? Or maybe, right? And I think Barbara is a former teacher of mine, ESL teacher, and she's extremely knowledgeable in ESL. How many years, Barbara? Oh.
How long does it take to learn a language? Thank you. I'll just say, how long does it take to learn a language? Jim Cummings at Boise in Toronto has researched to that, and he says it takes 2 years to learn the BICS. That's the basic interpersonal communication skills, and 10 to 14 years to learn the reading and writing. So it's a long process, and I would just encourage everybody, including the sponsor, to be patient with your people.
Thank you. Okay, Mark?
Clark. And I have a sore bum, so I have to stand up and swear. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Gallup, and I'd like to begin with a Gallup poll. How many people here have heard about PLAR or RPL, the Prior Learning Assessment Recognition? Oh, really good. That's more than a lot of places that I've spoken at. So we're really fortunate. Refugees and people who come to Canada come bearing gifts. They come bearing gifts of knowledge, experience, understanding, and abilities, and hope, and optimism. Those are really rich things for Canada. Really rich. And in the last 15 to 20 years, we've gotten much better in Canada at finding ways to recognize those gifts, what people bring here, and ways to document that, ways to validate that, and ways to help people move forward with their lives through that process. I've been really blessed. At Loyalist, I've been supported to do this work since 1983, and it's really been tremendous for me to be part of that. Really quite an honor. What prior learning assessment and recognition, which is now becoming the recognition of prior learning, is about, is helping people to identify the learning they've acquired in their life, wherever that learning has taken place, in whatever country or in whatever occupation or in whatever way, that learning is valuable and can be identified, can be documented in some cases, and in some cases not documented because they've fled a place where they've left everything behind. But that doesn't stop them from participating in PLAR activities, where they can have that learning assessed, and sometimes it's assessed for college credit, university credit, for entry into an occupation, for gaining employment. Sometimes it's done for personal healing purposes. Sometimes this process is done for professional development and other reasons. There's lots of purposes behind people pursuing PLAR activities. We've been really fortunate in this community. We've trained a lot of people in how to do PLAR. We've done that training through going to agencies and providing that training, and I really want to acknowledge two colleagues of mine who have done a lot of that training with me, Paul Zackos and Rosemary Reed, two good friends and colleagues who have also been part of that training for a long, long time. And in June, we'll be conducting the 27th Prior Learning Assessment Conference in Belleville, 27th annual conference, and bringing in people again from all over the place to learn how to do the PLAR, and then go back to their communities or First Nations or other countries to do that work. And so we're really clear that it brings benefits for people, whoever engage in PLAR activity. And the central activity is this, is putting together a portfolio. And in that portfolio, it includes things like a resume, job descriptions, reference letters, photographs of things that they've done, things they've worked on, things they've accomplished. Could be transcripts, it could be other types of documentations like articles or things about their family, things about their community, and so on. It brings it all together in one place, and they receive advising in how to do that. They receive support from someone, and in that relationship of the advisor and the learner, good things happen. Magical things sometimes. And so when that person starts working on their portfolio, and language is important, but it's not the main barrier. It can be achieved even when someone is just learning English or French or Mohawk or whatever the case might be. The process can begin. And in that process, because it's strengths-based, it's based on the person's achievements, the strengths, the gifts the Creator has to them, it starts to bring out good energy in that person, good thoughts, and dreams. So part of the process is setting goals and identifying what would you like your life to look like a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and how can we help you get there? So it's that process of releasing good energy, looking ahead, and then working towards it. And not doing it alone, so that you have to support an advisor or a counselor or so on. And our employment agencies in this area are really terrific at that. We've been part of that training of them in portfolio development for a long time, as well as people at the college like Sandy Nabrowski, who's the PLAR advisor. She does excellent work around helping people put portfolios together for college credit. But the potential to do this work with newcomers is really huge. And anyone can do this work. If you take the training to become a PLAR advisor, it's great. You can then start to do the work. You don't have to have a master's degree, you don't have to work at the college, you don't have to work at an employment agency. Somebody on your committee, or several people, can do the training. It takes 3 days. And then once you've gone through that training, you start to do the work. Helping people put portfolios together, helping them link them to community services and other places, and working through that process. So I do want to direct you to a website that's really important in this work, and it's called the Canadian Association of Prior Learning Assessment, CAPLA, CAPLA.ca. If you go to that website, they have an entire section devoted to newcomers, and it's called Experience Matters. So when you go to CAPLA.ca and then click on Experience Matters, it has a resource directory to help newcomers anywhere in Canada. It includes all the employment agencies, universities, colleges, immigration services that are helping newcomers with PLAR and that have services and resources for PLAR. That was brought online in July of 2015. It's a new service that the federal government has funded and supported, and it's a really great resource. So if you're looking for additional, and they have assessment tools and other resources on that website as well. But I would like, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
So we saw the different stages of what we consider to be settlement and integration, different stages from language assessment, language learning, university training in education, and PLAR would be for those who do not have the credentials that they would need in order to get a job. Now we're going to be past to the other stages when, let's say, the people have gone through all those processes and all those stages, and they decided to go on self-employment instead of, and it happens a lot with newcomers. We're going to see a lot of self-employed immigrants in Belleville. Some of them just maybe have a restaurant or a tax cab company. Some of them are a little bit more at the stage of having a bigger business. I know of a couple of people there just building a new hotel in town, and they're immigrants as well. So those are the different types of a different level of life that people would achieve after a certain amount of years standing in the community, and that's when we go to Suzanne Andrews to talk about the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, my name is Suzanne Andrews. I'm the manager of the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce. Here in the Quinte area, we have 5 different chambers. We represent about 1,400 to 1,500 businesses in this area. Across the province, the chamber network actually represents about 60,000 businesses. So it's a huge network, and we have a lot of influence with the business owners and those different companies, and trying to get messaging and ideas to the business owners. On the refugee and immigration file, it's being spearheaded really well by the Canadian Chamber of Commerce out of Ottawa. This has been a big issue for them for many years, and they're strong advocates of immigration. They understand that in order for Canadian companies to meet the workforce needs that they're going to have moving forward, we need to attract more people into Canada. So there has been a report very recently, and it is on our website. I know Orlando has read it, Immigration for a Competitive Canada, Why Highly Skilled International Talent is at Risk. We need to do more to get them to Canada. And I think a lot of the things in this report could actually also be used on the refugees as well, the talents and the skills and the experiences that they're bringing to the Canadian workforce. In fact, the Canadian Chamber was part of a big discussion not too long ago in Ottawa at Rideau Hall with the Governor General, Dave Johnson. And they were really talking about mobilizing the private sector to integrate and welcome refugees. And there's definitely a role for the private sector to play, not only from a donation point of view, but further in far as making sure that their workplaces are friendly, diverse, and very welcoming. So I think that, you know, from a local point of view, the chambers and the business community are definitely looking for ways that we can get involved and help. There is, as was mentioned a couple of hours ago by somebody else, there are jobs in the Quinte area. I know Karen Post is here from the city of Belleville, and they run job fairs, and there's employers there that are, you know, really looking for workers. A lot of them right now, it's not necessarily skilled workers. Some of it is just entry-level jobs at the manufacturers. But I know that there are jobs available, and one of the barriers, and we've talked to some of the manufacturers about this, is the need for grade 12. A lot of them, that's a minimum standard they're looking for. And not only is that a barrier for any refugees that are looking for work, but also even for our own unemployed people that maybe don't have that grade 12. So I know we need to take a really good look at that and find out why do they need the grade 12? What is it that grade 12 guarantees to them as far as their work is going? Could we accomplish that another way? So there's definitely work to be done, and the Chambers of Commerce are definitely ready to work with the committees and with QUIS and find ways that we can get that information to the business community.
Thank you. And I'll make an observation about that. We have also the Local Immigration Partnership. It's one of our programs that we have at QUIS. And thanks to and John is sitting in the back. Thank you, John, for putting all of this together. We have a network of the different sectors in the health sector, education. John, do you want to talk a little bit about this? Come up front. And it's important to emphasize all this before I go to the next panels. It's the next step, and we're already working on that, is have a committee of local employers. We already have had a lot of them approaching us. They're very interested in seeing what the skills are there for the refugees, what they could be able to do to fast track and employ them. So we are creating a list of those employers now. We have been working with MP Newellis on that as well. So there's a big interest from the local employers, and that's going to be our next step. So talk a little bit about the.
So I'm John Robertson, and I'm the program manager for the Quinte Local Immigration Partnership, and that is a partnership at this point about 45 or more organizations in the area. It includes the Chambers of Commerce, it includes Loyalist College, it includes employers, manufacturers, social services, from every facet of the whole Quinte area in terms of working together to try and improve the situation for newcomers in the area. Which, of course, if you improve services in the area for newcomers, it makes better services for everyone in the community. So we try to streamline things, we try to run this sort of event so we can have people find out all the knowledge they can about people coming in. So basically, that's about it, I guess. Do You want to say something else?
Yeah,
We have a website, and it's www. I'm just kidding. It's www.
Quincy LIP.
Why can you do this?
He's got a good website. I know where it is. It's on my card.
It's on the brochure in your blue thing.
It is www.QuincyLIP.ca, and you can find me there. You can find all our phone numbers there.
Yeah, all the information about the local education partnership will be in the website. Now, we talked about the training, the assessment, the training, and now we're going to talk about self-employment. When it gets to self-employment, when people start thinking about if they have a family, what if I started a business, and the word is up to you now.
Thank you, Orlando. I'm Glenn Kozak, and I'm the Executive Director of the Trendvale Business Development Corporation. For the past 28 years, Trendvale has been providing information and counseling to small business startups and expansions. We also have a role in community economic development, but our biggest tool in our toolbox is our investment fund. And we have the capacity to lend up to $250,000 for business startups or expansions, when conventional lenders like banks and credit unions can't find solutions for applicants. So we find solutions for new businesses and for business expansions in places where the banks and credit unions can't or won't go because it's outside their terms of reference. This past year, we've done about 34 loans in our community in excess of $2 million in total. The entire fund is just over $7 million now. In addition, the Small Business Center, beg your pardon, Trendvale is funded federally by the government of Canada. In addition, the Small Business Center, which is funded by the province of Ontario, also provides information and counseling for new business startups and for existing businesses. They are particularly interested in providing accommodation to younger people through starter company and summer company programming, which is all about self-employment. So both Trendvale and the Small Business Center, under the one roof at the Quinte Business Development Center at Loyalist College, specialize and focus on job creation and job expansion. Newcomers and immigrants are oftentimes highly skilled individuals in terms of being resourceful, oftentimes out of a matter of necessity. And those kind of skills that they develop, those life skills and resourcefulness, are fully transferable here, despite the barriers of language and different tax structures and the rules and regulations that are put up before any new entrepreneurs and any new businesses. There's one particular program that would be of interest to younger newcomers, younger immigrants. Trendvale is a community partner with a program that's known as Futurepreneur. It used to be known as the Canada Youth Business Foundation. Futurepreneur in particular has a newcomer program where it can provide up to $15,000 in funding to newcomers that have absolutely no credit history. And there's no security required either. This is a huge leg up, not just for young people who don't have a lot of assets at this early point in their life and can pledge security to conventional lenders like banks and credit unions. When you don't have that kind of security, when you're just getting started, these resources, personal resources, are not available to you. So in the case of Futurepreneur, they're looking strictly for a good credit history for younger people who are already in Canada and part of the community. For newcomers, they waive those requirements completely, and basically all you need is a social insurance number that doesn't start with 9. It's a technicality, but it's not a big deal. It just means that you have a right to work in this country as an employee or employer. And also, 2 personal references, only one of which has to be from a Canadian citizen. So it's very easy entry for newcomers to access potentially $15,000 of financing for those younger people 18 to 39 years of age. I have material on that if anyone is interested. Again, we're in the small business beg your pardon, we're in the Pioneer Building at the Quinte Business Development Center. Both Trendbell and the Small Business Center there are there to encourage job expansion, job creation, business startups, and all services are absolutely free, except of course, when you're borrowing money, which needs to be paid back at some point. I think that's it for now.
Thank you, Glenn. And this also is interesting. Anybody has a question to Glenn on that? No. It's also interesting. The families. It's very important for them to understand how the financial system works in Canada. A lot of people would be very tempted to get those credit cards and easily load them. It's not only newcomers. Canadians do that as well, mostly when they're in the student phase and then they have all the student loans and then they, you know the story. So it's important when we are doing the settlement service to do some sort of an education on how things work and what the consequences of those credit cards can be later on in terms of credit. This is one point to make note of. So just keep this in mind also for the sponsoring groups. Conversation that should be taken eventually. Well, without any more, do you have any questions to the panel? Do you want to open a discussion? We still have a few minutes. It's 3:28. We were intending to go until another 15 minutes, but if there are no other questions, it's up to you. Question?
I'm wondering about ESL programs available because there are so many new families. It sounds like so many new families coming in. Your capacity to be able to teach, to be able to provide services, ESL services, programs for them.
I'm going to give you the microphone so everybody else can walk with the microphone.
We have so many new families, or potentially new families, coming into the area. I'm just wondering if the ESL program is going to have the capacity to be able to provide them with the services.
Well, as you can imagine, I've been inundated with inquiries about people wanting to help in our ESL classes. I've also received lots of resumes from people wanting to teach ESL if we're going to be expanding our program due to the influx of Syrian refugees. And I have been interviewing. Unfortunately, I can't hire people if I don't have people in the classroom. So I have been interviewing, I have been planning on my staffing, and I'm doing it for Belleville and Kingston. And what we're finding, at least my experience in Kingston has been we get people, we establish a class and get people in the class, and we had one family in there for 1 week and then they moved to Quebec, I think it was. And so here we have this teacher, and I've hired her to teach 5 classes in the afternoon as this pilot, and then I had to hire somebody to backfill her for the evening classes, and so now I've got these students who left, and I haven't, so then what do? Do we displace that person I just hired? You know, it's an administrative quandary actually, but you know, fortunately our board has been very, very patient in allowing us to keep classes open, and we will continue to do that. But I haven't seen a surge of people coming through. And when I spoke with the manager of language training at MCIT, he said that really has not been the case. That in our areas, we haven't had a lot settle in this area. But as soon as he finds out, he will let us know. And I can assure you that our board will be very supportive in building capacity in any way that we can.
I also want to add something to what Michelle said, and I have seen this. It's a big challenge. We have a large catchment area. It goes from Colborne to Napanee, Bancroft to Peakton. You're talking about a 200 kilometers corridor, north-south, east-west. Some of the families are in rural areas. Let's talk about the Marmora, Tweed, Peakton, or Welland. And some of them are in Napanee, some of them are in Brighton. and our main location is in Belleville. So it's kind of a challenge for the transportation. We don't have a TTC in the area. So the TTC basically are the volunteers. We're also trying to make sure that they get independence by obtaining a vehicle. We have been struggling with some of the driver's license tests in terms of getting accredited interpreters that go with them to the MTO. I had a big issue recently that I had to call the minister's office in the province to sort it out. Apparently we found out there were two sets of rules, one from west of Toronto and another one from east of Toronto. So if we were in the west of Toronto, there would be no problem with the interpreters that we were sending in terms of the accreditation they had. But because the rules were different in this side, we had all kinds of issues. It's not federal, it's provincial. So there was a big discussion with that. I had our MVP involved into that as well, and they realized that that was a big problem. So they are reviewing this policy right now. It takes time for a review of policies, as you all know. But in the meantime, we sorted out the problem. We were able to find somebody that they would accept. It was costly because the person we had to bring was from Scarborough. But it was done. We have a very limited fund for interpretation in terms of the cost that it requires. And that's hopefully now, after the conversation started with MTO, I know a lot more families will need driver's license. This is going to be a problem that will be minimized. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay. We've talked all day about all the wonderful things we're going to do for refugees, right? Which is lovely, and everybody is behind it, and there's certainly the resources to do it. But what's the answer for the naysayers? That the comment that I get sometimes is, okay, that's all fine and dandy, you know, and we're looking after the refugees, and we're giving them this, we're giving them that. What are we doing for our own refugees, the people that can't afford affordable housing, that don't have jobs, so on and so forth? What's the answer to that question so we can get rid of that rift or, you know, that negativity that people are going to use against helping refugees?
I probably can respond to that myself. There is a website that it was posted through the Canadian Council of Refugees that demystifies all the misconceptions that people normally have about refugees. For instance, refugees are making more money than pensioners. That's inaccurate. And different statements that go sometimes online through email chains. I would recommend everyone to go on the website, CCR, I'm trying to pull my memory now. It's the Canadian Council for Refugees. Everybody has Google. Canadian Council for Refugees. You go to the website and you see at the first page of the website, there will be a section that talks about misconceptions about refugees, and there is a question and answer and a list of the main topics that goes against that. The second thing I would do is I would recommend the people that have these questions to join the anti-poverty table in the Quinte region, which is very active. It's very focused on solutions for the homelessness in the region. And it's a very active group. I think probably some of you in this room now are part of the table, maybe some left already. But it's very important, the participation of the community to end poverty. We are also part of the table so that we are working, it's not only for newcomers but for everybody. We don't want to see this happening. I live in a smaller community with the 2,000, rural community with 2,000 as the population. I have never seen a homeless person in the community. And we had a group over there. I was invited to have a expression of interest in seeing what the discussion was about homelessness. One lady stand up and said, well, I'm so tired of hearing about homelessness, but I have never seen a homelessness here. And then the other one said, well, let's go to Toronto, get in a bus, and bring them in so we can help them. So this is about the same thing that goes on. We have a problem of homelessness in Belleville, not compared to Hamilton, or not trying to bash other communities, but they're much of a bigger problem in those communities than here. It's a solution that we need to the problem we have here, which is feasible. If I look to Toronto, the amount of homelessness, it's going to take years for a solution there. For us, it's much, much feasible. It's not impossible. And that's what we should be doing.
I would also suggest you have a look at the report from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. This isn't about charity or about doing it because it's the right thing to do, although I know that's why you're all in the room. But this is also an economic need in Canada, is to have more workers. I was at an economic breakfast this morning with the Belleville Chamber, and we have a very aging workforce in Canada. If we want the Canadian economy to grow over the next 20 years, we need to bring in more people into Canada. It can't all be done by exporting. We need to grow our country, and not to mention like the skills and the diversity that's already been talked about. But you need to turn it around on these people that talk that way. This is about building a country and building an economy as well as just doing it because it's the good thing to do.
Question.
I'm just wondering if you have an anticipation of numbers of individuals that are actually to join. Is it either confirmed now and then perhaps contingent upon your application for settlement as well?
Yeah, we try to keep track of all the current sponsorship groups that are out there. You probably have seen some on the slide at the presentation that QUIS had. 8 are the sponsoring groups. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's only 8 families. Some of those groups are sponsoring 2 or more families. On my last calculation, there will be approximately 25 families in the process or ready to apply for the sponsorship. But when I said that 25 families, it's not only in Belleville. Actually, Belleville has the least number of those families. Most of them are outside of Belleville in rural areas. We're talking about Brighton, we're talking about the Prince Edward County. There's going to be 12 families over there. And the county needs the population. They're very eager to have them because, as Suzanne mentioned, our population is aging, and if we don't have people coming over here, who is going to pay for our retirement? So, I think it's a very important issue, and they're coming, but I think 25. We did a capacity measure before, 3 months before or 3 months ago, and we were seeing that there would be a possibility of getting more people in here, and the whole region would have a capacity to have 100 families throughout the whole area if we had the sponsorship groups for that. It would be just a question of adjusting existing services to make sure that we will be able to provide and assist everyone. Michelle, you want to say something?
You guys were talking about families. Shortly before I came up to the panel, I was talking to the 2 ladies at the back there about childcare. And that's a huge question, especially with some of the Syrian families who have very large families and lots of children. And we do have, if they are eligible, which they are, the refugees, because they are automatically permanent residents. And so they qualify for free childcare. Pardon? While they're in ESL. So while they're attending language classes, their childcare will be provided within budget. So it depends. I mean, I am working with the federal government right now because they're the ones who fund it. And I am in discussions with them about that because it hasn't been a concern. We haven't had a huge influx of Syrians yet. But in this discussion with the 25 families, they do have to have some childcare if they're not school age. So we do have some on-site daycare at 41 Octavian where the classes are held, but not a lot of space. And but we also will pay for childcare at other licensed care facilities. Okay, providing I have the budget. So.
Thank you. So, any other questions? Yes.
Many of the refugees may come with limited
language skills. If they are able to access some employment, how will that impact the dollars they receive from the government?
That's a very good question.
So in terms of additional funding, so there is a first wave of funding going to the resettlement agencies who are handling the first wave, the first arrivals in the 6 resettlement centers across Ontario. So that's been happening since before Christmas. There is additional funding this fiscal year that is going to be negotiated between our CC staff and settlement services providers. So that's going to happen within days or weeks. The envelope, the budget envelope is not yet known, but we know that this is coming. In addition to this, so there was a call for proposal for all settlement services that are provided across Ontario that was posted last summer. Because of this certain initiative, this call for proposal has been put on hold so that we can put all efforts on Syria. And there will be negotiations happening over the next few weeks for the next fiscal year. I think that my colleagues in Ottawa are still working on numbers for this fiscal year and for next fiscal year. But we saw the numbers before in my presentation. There's a substantial amount of money that's going to be made available to settlement and resettlement service providers across the country. So I'm sorry I don't have a more precise answer, but that's coming.
One question is, if they are receiving, you mentioned about the refugees, they would be receiving assistance from the government, right? So if somebody is able to work and they want to work, are they deducted the amount that they are receiving because they are working? I think that's the question you did. Was it correct? Yeah. You know about it?
So I believe they can deduct, I think it's up to 50% of their income. Without being deducted from the allowance that they receive from the government. But I'll get back to you on that.
It's the allowance. Yes. Okay. I was not very sure about that myself. So, but you had a yes?
Can I go back and look at getting driver's licenses for people settling in the more rural areas? That is a discussion we've had in our group in Tweed, and we have raised so many dollars, and we've applied for some other dollars, and we're hoping for perhaps a BVOR settlement, but I drive a car, and I don't know how we could possibly afford to purchase a car, keep it in running order, put gas in it, even though it's pretty cheap at the moment, and pay the insurance from the limited dollars we have. So we decided as a group that we couldn't go that way, and that we were going to depend on our volunteers, which kind of puts our people, our refugee families, into a more beholden situation where they always have to apply for somebody to drive. Has anybody got any ideas on this?
I have good news for you.
we thought about it. And one of the solutions we've been thinking about and talking about, it was even before the refugee crisis, because we have this large rural area. The first point of contact for, we need to create reporting, we need to substantiate to our funders that we have those clients, that those clients exist. And when we receive the funding, we have to show that it's taxpayers' money. So we need to provide that we are providing the services, this is the amount of clients we have, and based on that, we get the funding. So how to go over the challenge of this huge rural area where people are spread all over? Technology was the response. If they have a computer at home, the first thing was a network with the libraries. We contacted all the libraries. Every library, every small community has a library. If they could go to the library with their documents that could be scanned and sent to our office, then we would have the proof of ID that substantiates that we're going to be providing services to those clients. It's very uncomfortable for some of them in terms of privacy to be in a library. Some of those libraries are very small. But what they can do, once they have substantiate the proof of ID, which could be maybe one volunteer taking them to our office so that we have all this. Skype would be one of the possibilities. It's not in service yet, it's in planning for a long time, and we definitely need more staff to be able to do that, but that's going to be a solution. There would be one frontline worker dealing with Skype, talking to those clients remotely, and I have been talking to Michelle about the possibility, and of course, has to go to the board, of maybe have this long distance learning. This was the solution. It's not original. It's been done in the north already for health services. You have a doctor and you can't get on a plane and go from Iqaluit to Thunder Bay. So what you do, you go on a video conferencing. It's a different system. It's not as affordable as Skype, but it's been done and it's possible. So it's in the radar. It's going to happen. It's just a question of time. We will be talking to the federal government in terms of funding for this as well.
I feel the issue of transportation from the rural areas is something that I'm noticing now and seeing on the ground level with the current groups that have come in the Kingston, Picton, Belleville areas, that of the refugees that I've worked with in the past 6 months, the majority have had very low levels of English, despite what our speaker this morning has said. But in general, so far, very low levels of English and very low literacy rates. So I think to really make that language training piece successful, the person needs to be in a daily program, Monday to Friday, all day. And it's something that I think the sponsoring group should be thinking about because we're such a large community. We have many small towns that are sponsoring, but that language training piece in the first few years is really important to be like a full-time job for the people. And that transportation piece, how to get them to the school, is a gap right now and an issue.
And there you go. A few years ago, we had the same issue with Trenton and Access. So talking to the local immigration partnership, I think it was Linda Lyle, she had contacted one of the bus companies that were going to Loyalist College, dropping their students. So they did some modifications on the itinerary just to drop off so that the students at the same time would be. There are solutions there because we have a network and everybody knows everybody in a smaller community and everybody can help each other. So we can do that. It's just a question of planning, of sitting down and planning, seeing what locations are in need of those transportations, mapping them, taking them to the council at the county level and see what can we do about this. So it's just a question of community engagement and there are possibilities out there. Any other questions? Our time is almost over now. Yes?
Can
can't we work with the board of school? Because they have buses goes to the county and it's 2 o'clock or whatever, so they could be busy. So I don't know if we can add 5 more people on the bus.
Suggestion taken. That's how, yeah, it's a good idea. Yes. Thank you. So what I would like to do, and then our next local immigration partnership meeting, and put this into the agenda. If the groups can contact our office and let us know where are you located, where are the families, specific location and the times that they need to access those courses, we can start working on that.
I just wanted to say, I think that's a great suggestion, but with school boards and the Ministry of Education, there is a safe schools policy as far as mixing adults with children. So that's where you're going to have to start.
All right. Okay, I think we're running out of almost time. One more question, if anybody has one? If not, our meeting is adjourned to the next forum. We are planning, thank you.
If you're interested, or the people who are helping, like the volunteers who are helping with the conversation circles and that sort of thing, if you go to the website www.language.ca, that is the Center for Canadian Language Benchmarks, and it will give you an education on what the benchmarks mean, and also what the expectations are of the refugees for speaking. So, oh, Fernando, you want that?
Thank you again for coming.
And we'll do this again, so we'll